This episode is brought to you by Crystal Lake Entertainment Ad Space. Advertise on the Coffee Fueled Stories podcast, the ideal platform for promoting your book release or sale. Your ad, 30 or 60 seconds long, will be featured at both the start and end of an episode, reaching a dedicated audience of horror and dark fiction readers. This is a perfect opportunity to increase visibility and connect with your target audience. See link in the show notes for details, or go to crystallakepub.com/shop. Crystal Lake Entertainment presents Coffee Fueled Stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and pocket DJ of Coffee Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's special guest is Matthew Mercier. Well, welcome to the show. We are going to talk about your brand new book, baby, that just came out last Friday, Poe and I. So why don't you go ahead and let the listeners know a little bit about the book before we start nerding out, because I'm super excited to talk about your book, baby, here.
Okay, great. Yeah, Poe and I is loosely based on my time as caretaker for the last home of Edgar Allan Poe. But I've created an entirely fictional narrator. His name is Jonah Peabody. He takes the job as caretaker for the last home. He's arrived in New York, or in the Bronx rather, with the intention, he says, of trying to find his lost sister, Andromeda. But as the story progresses, the chapters alternate between past and present. It becomes quickly apparent that Jonah Peabody is an unreliable narrator in the fine Poe tradition. So, as the story moves forward, we hear more of Jonah's childhood and his traumatic upbringing, and then we return to the present, where he's dealing with his own ghosts and Poe's ghost. And so I think it accelerates the narrative to a point where Jonah's unreliability, he's fully upfront about it. So he's a liar and he's not entirely trustworthy, but it quickly becomes apparent as to why. So that's the basic gist without giving anything away. So
Absolutely. And we're not going to give anything away. And if I do ask you questions that are related to things that you don't want to share, that's totally cool. Sorry, listeners, I'll edit that stuff out, because I do have some questions. And oh, by the way, I'm wearing my Poe shirt for you today.
Oh, nice.
So this is from the Poe Museum. My buddy went to the Poe Museum in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, and he picked up a couple of items for me. Excellent. And so I thought I'd honor you with the Raven shirt today.
Thank you so much.
I love how you describe yourself. You describe yourself as a teacher, a storyteller, and a mushroom hunter.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to go a little bit, if you could give us a little bit into each one of those descriptors that you use. So let's talk about you being a teacher. So what do you teach, and how did you get into teaching?
Well, I guess I started teaching. I formally started teaching professionally when I was in the MFA program at Hunter College. I hadn't really taught before that. I'd had odd jobs throughout most of my 20s. And then I took the job as an adjunct professor at Hunter College, just really as a survival mechanism. I needed a job. And I fell in love with it. I liked being in the classroom. I enjoyed interacting with students. I loved interacting with students, young people who were younger than me, and blowing their minds and teaching them about literature and writing. I taught mostly writing, expository writing, for a long time, which is what they give you when you first start teaching. But I quickly graduated I begged off that after a few years, and I taught children's literature for a while, and that was incredibly fun. So mostly literature. I taught Shakespeare for a while. I taught some poetry. I dabbled in everything, and I really, really loved it. And I think in another life, if it was feasible, I would be a professor of some kind. I would love to be around young people. I'm not teaching at the moment, but it is a mode that I can go into at any time. So I do love being in a classroom. I look forward to going back at some point. So yeah, that's the teaching part.
And what's kind of cool is, I think you might agree, part like one of the coolest things about teaching and being in front of the classroom is it is a little bit of performance art. You do have to kind of entertain your students, if you will. So storytelling and, imparting wisdom onto the youth, like that, you have to admit that's a bonus of storytelling, right?
It is. Yeah, it's an absolute bonus. And you have to be very careful because it's easy to assume they know what you know, and obviously they don't. So, yeah, but it's a wonderful, they're just like oysters, and you just can just feed them. And I love it. And yeah, I do miss it. But I look forward to returning to it. But yeah, I love being around young people.
Very cool. So, how did you get into becoming a mushroom hunter? How did that happen?
Well, I'm not a professional mushroom hunter, but I just kind of put that in my bio because I've fallen in love with mushrooms. I now live in upstate New York. I no longer live in New York City. So now I live in the woods. And one of the features of living in the woods is that mushrooms are popping up left and right. So I took it. I mean, it's behooves you to learn mushrooms because some of them are edible. Quite a few of them are not. So I just became obsessed with finding them and finding all the varieties and learning the poisonous ones and learning the edible ones. I haven't graduated to growing them myself yet. That takes some time and knowledge, but for right now, I get a great deal of joy out of walking out into the woods, knowing when the mushrooms are going to pop up. Like just you can go by your calendar when chanterelles, morels, chicken of the woods. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these, but they pop up at certain times during the calendar, and when it rains, stuff like that. You go after a rainstorm. So yeah, that's I just put that in my bio because it is a huge part of who I am. I've become obsessed with the mycorrhizal network.
That is so crazy cool because I've never like mushrooms kind of creep me out a little bit. Not gonna lie. And so I was like, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this because for me, when I see them in the, when you're off hiking or something like that, I want to just like not run away from them, but I want to try to stay away from them. I'm like, oh, fungi, like, ooh, creepy, creepy. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I see. There's a strand of horror now that's based. It's what they call it, spore. Yeah. And I have to be honest. I have mixed feelings about it because I don't because mushrooms are benevolent. They are going to help us. The
yes,
mycorrhizal network that mushrooms survive on. If you start reading about that network, the relationship they have with the trees and the earth, it's incredible. It really,
yes,
it's really incredible.
yes.
Yeah. And so, and as far as being afraid of them, like really, you only have to you learn the poisonous ones first. You learn like the five or six that will really do some damage. And then the rest will give you a bad night, some indigestion. So you learn the nasty ones first, and then you can avoid those.
Oh,
And you just never touch anything you don't know. So
right.
it's just like anything else. But yeah, there's no reason to be afraid.
It's honestly, it's because I have read too much horror. So,
Right. Yeah, you read a lot of these books, and you're just like,
and
oh
you're
God.
like, "Ugh," yeah.
Yeah.
But I should learn the poisonous ones. You're absolutely right. I should learn which ones are like, and then, like you said, I do take pictures. I'm fascinated with, I think you had just recently posted the stuffed Poe with the ones, I don't know the names of them, but they're the ones that are really kind of big and cool and kind of yellow looking, and they kind of look like fans, and they kind of like spread around the tree. Those are fascinating. Like, and it is the system itself is absolutely fascinating from a scientific perspective. Like, as opposed to, so like me with an irrational fear of like snakes and spiders,
Mhm.
I'm not terrified of mushrooms the way that I am of, like, say, snakes. So
Yeah. No, I don't like snakes either. I'm Indiana Jones. I don't like snakes.
Right, right. Um, so I know we're going to deep dive into your book, but I want to play a few things around with you,
Mhm.
because first off, I want to gush about your book, and it's I just, oh my gosh, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was a true treat, and I just I'm gonna have to read it again because I feel like I was kind of going like not quickly, but I was reading a little bit quicker than I wanted to just because I know I had a timeline to read it.
Hmm.
And with some of like my favorite books, I like to stew and chew and like really chew on some of the words.
Hmm.
And this one you really gave me a lot. And I just like I said, I'm so glad that we finally are getting a chance to talk about your book.
Hmm.
And um, the one question I do have, and I don't know if you can spill the beans on this, so if I cross the line, just let me know.
Okay.
Um, you had mentioned Bradford is working on his thesis.
Uh-huh.
And I have this line here. I've quoted this line, horror and its history. I'm writing a book about it. And so my question to you is, and then it's mentioned again later. I won't go into details, but a horror, it's called horror. You mentioned it, horror of history. And so my question is, do you plan on writing this Bradford's book, like Bradford's thesis? Like, please write this book because it sounds absolutely awesome.
Uh, I am so happy that you focused on that because Bradford is an important character. And so the thesis, Bradford features in the book that I'm working on now. I brought him
Wow.
back. Yeah. So I haven't written his thesis per se, but I'm basically elaborating on it in a way that I'm finding enjoyable, talking about history and how history just haunts the land. And it's just so Bradford was such an interesting character to me. And the trouble with doing first person narration is that you can't jump into everyone's heads. And
Right.
so he was one of those. So, and I just love him so much. I'm so happy you focused on that and you found him interesting because I love him
Oh
and we
yeah.
don't. So,
Yeah, yeah, I thoroughly like so that part is as you know at the beginning, and
mhm,
then you touched on it again,
mhm.
and then that's when I was like, that's it. I was like, he has to write this book. I want to read Bradford's book, his horror of history. The other thing that I thought was there were so many laugh out loud scenes. I was literally so I went between like cringing and like, oh shit, to holy crap, this is hilarious. And one of the scenes is, and of course, I don't know if anybody else found this hilarious, but Vicky the Greek, when he's at the diner, and she says, "What is this? Library? You eat, don't read." And I just thought like that was hilarious. And I love how you have some of these peripheral characters
Mhm.
that when you introduce them, oh, and like for example, the Puerto Rican Vampire Club, I
Oh,
freaking love those guys.
do. Oh, good. I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. It makes me so happy to hear you say that because I was told they were unrealistic.
Oh, come on. Carla
Oh,
and Oscar and Benny, I love those kids. I love them.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I love them too. And they're characters again that I'm writing at the moment. I'm writing an audio drama for a radio station that I'm working at, and we're exploring those characters more in the radio drama and using the drama to use. They play a little bit more of a central role. Oh, good. I'm glad you love them because I love them too. Yeah.
I do. So this is going to tap into the next thing because music is important and with identity and especially like as teenagers, at least it was for me. So you reference a couple of bands. So you reference Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Twisted Sister, Black Flag, and Misfits, and then punk rock Puerto Rican album. So that's what I was like, we have to talk about that because like I said, so Edgar Allan Poe and
Mhm.
punk rock, like it just doesn't get any better than that. I mean, come on.
No, it doesn't. No. I punk rock. Yeah, I mean, I had a playlist. I don't know if people. I know Stephen Graham Jones does this, but he makes a playlist for any book that he writes. And I definitely had punk rock. I had Henry Rollins, Black Flag, The Breeders. I don't know if they're punk so much.
I,
Yeah, they're punk.
well,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. My 90s. I had that 90s style. And then I had Leonard Cohen mentioned as well.
Yes,
Leonard,
yes.
he's like the patron saint of melancholy.
Come
So
on.
he had to be in there. So yeah, that was a huge. I played music before I write. I don't play it while I write. I play it to get in the mood and then I have to shut it off. So, but I always listen to some, yeah, AC/DC or some hard stuff and then jump onto the computer. Yeah.
Nice. And that's actually one of the questions I have. One of what I consider one of my stock questions is regarding the writing process. So some people like to have music, some people like to blast music. So that was going to be my question to you is, do you like to listen to eerie music, especially, regarding this particular book? But that makes sense. So you listen to it beforehand so it doesn't distract you while you're writing, which
Right.
totally makes sense.
I listen to it to get in a good mood. You have
Yeah.
to be in a good mood, and music always gets me in a good mood. So yeah.
Nice, nice. So when I was looking at this, especially because of Andromeda, and you had referenced Twisted Sister, like the first thing that popped in my head, of course, was "We're Not Gonna Take It," and it just took me back to my teenage years. So I was having fun with some of your flashback scenes, and remembering my childhood, and that's when Poe came into my life was as a teenager and wearing all black. So that's why I'm saying I love the Puerto Rican Vampire Club. I think they're great.
Right. I'm so
That's
happy.
awesome.
I
I'm
hope I'm
I'm
in love with them too. So
I hope so too. Like I said, I can't say enough about this book. Like this book had everything in it. For a Poe lover, those fans of Gothic literature, it
mhm.
literally just hits so many notes. It has funny, it has horror. Um, so I decided to zone in on a few words. So I'm say a few words. It's like a lot. So bear with me here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So detective, death, deception, delusion, destiny, distrust, discarded, demons, dragons, disgust, devils, denial, disturbed, darkness, despair, Dupin, doubly dead, and destroy.
Very nice alliteration.
So those words, as I'm reading your book, I literally just started writing these words and they just kind of, these D words just kind of stuck. And I was just like, wow, that's what I'm saying. It has so much, like all of these words. I'm just like, I felt like a kid rediscovering Poe. Like that's how it felt to me.
Yeah. Wow. That's the greatest compliment you can give me because it's I wanted it to be for people who loved Poe, but you don't have to love Poe to enjoy the book, I think. And humor is so important to me. Humor is I don't like despair, and if I find myself despairing too much, I have to throw humor in, not to it's a fine act, balancing act, because otherwise it can ruin something that's serious. But humor is so essential, even if
Abs-
it's yeah, it's so essential.
And then one thing I thought was really kind of cool was thank you for making your characters eat. But I like that you mentioned Honey Crisp apples.
Oh yeah, my
I
favorite.
just I just had one for my first time. I can't remember. I think it was this year or maybe it was last year. I'd never had one before.
Oh
It is
wow,
the most delicious apple.
it's wonderful. Yeah, it's the absolute best. I have them all the time. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And
So
so I
happy.
was like, yay. I was like, oh yeah, Honeycrisp apple. I could totally, super yummy.
I'm so happy. That's great.
And
The
then, oh
uh,
yes, please.
no, the I was going to say the Vicky's Cafe. That's where a lot of the characters eat. I
Yeah.
think Cubano. The Vicky line is actually taken verbatim from the real Vicky. There was a real Vicky's Cafe, and she always used to slap my newspaper because I would go in there with a book, and she's like, what are you doing? This isn't a library. You don't read. You eat and you get out, so I can get my next customer. She was a hard ass, and so that is yeah, Vicky, and that sadly burned down, so it's no
Oh,
longer in existence. But she built somewhere else. But yeah, that Vicky is real. I took that because that was the only place I ate when I lived in the cottage. It was the only affordable place that I could go. So yeah.
Yeah, and you couldn't really cook in there, right? I mean, the place is like it's very tiny. Like there wasn't you didn't have like a setup in there where, like a little hot pot or anything like that, right? Like
Um,
cooking.
you could. I mean, the real Poe Cottage had a kitchen, and you could cook there, but it was a very tight space, and
Yeah.
didn't have real good ventilation. So I was always afraid that I was going to burn the house down.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. That's why I was like, I would be terrified even to make a cup of noodles in like a microwave or something.
Yeah, it didn't have a vent. I don't think it had a vent, which had to be illegal. It didn't have anything close to a vent, so it was. I was always afraid it was going to start a grease fire, and it was right next to the boiler and the hot water heater, so it was just a recipe for disaster. But it's still there, so the caretaker who's there now gets. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess they get away with it, but it just struck me as not to code. So I
For
don't
sure.
know.
For sure. And that's one thing too that I would love to talk with you about. Like, just oh my gosh, to the fact that you lived there for 3 years. Was it 3 years you were there?
2002 to two, I think it was 4 years actually. I think I may have said 3 years or something, but it was January of 2002 to December of 2005. So almost
Yeah.
4 years. Yeah. So yeah.
That is so cool. And, as you said, you had to, debunk a lot of myths and you gave a lot of tours. But all of that aside, um, just to sit, to be in the presence of this guy, to be in his last space, like I don't know. It just like when I think about what you did there, not just the tours and things, but like if when you were just sitting there, after the day or something along those lines and sitting and having, a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, which we're going to talk about that too. Um, but to just kind of sit and take it in and almost kind of like pinch yourself and be like, holy shit, I am in Poe's last residence.
Yeah. It never got old. Never got old. It was a huge thrill to move in. The first day it snowed. It was really magical. And the first day was I think I moved in on his birthday.
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if memory serves, I have to go back. And maybe it's apocryphal. Maybe my memory's playing a trick, but I'm fairly certain I moved in on his birthday. But I know it snowed on my first day of work, and it was very magical. I had no guests, so I got to enjoy the cottage. Yeah, and it's a privilege to be able to inhabit that space where he lived, and I took it very seriously. I mean, the fact that I was there, that he had lived in those halls, walked in those rooms, and his wife died there. It was, yeah, I took it very, very seriously. It was not something to take lightly. So, and every caretaker has felt that way, I think. I don't think anyone takes the job without, they don't take it frivolously. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I took it.
And other reference, as if you will, right? It's
Mhm.
that's so cool. That's like I said, when I would stop, like I would be reading your book and then I would stop and think about it and just think, wow, he actually lived in Poe's cottage. Like, holy crap! Like this makes it even like, more intense, like more insane. That being said, now did you have to put on a performance? Like, did you have to take a test, kind of like,
Like when I interviewed for the job.
yeah, did they make you like perform something or like how was there even like that type of test like or was it just answer these questions to see how you test your Poe knowledge basically?
So, no, the test is completely fictional. They did not give me any kind of protest. They did require 6 references, which is a lot, but they did want to make sure that I was mentally stable, that I was not going to leave because so the woman told me a story that they hired a caretaker once, and then they showed up a few days later or a few weeks later, and he was quite pale and shaking and not really didn't see they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, and then they realized that he wasn't eating. He needed the free rent, and he had just taken the job out of desperation, and he wasn't taking care of himself, and so his mental and physical health were deteriorating. So they had to make sure that I was that was their primary concern because they had some bad hires, and everyone hears the words free rent and they just leap on it, and you get people who are not ready to deal with. So I had to have another job at that the job did not pay. Um, so unfortunately, I had to commute into the city to do another job, but it was a small price to pay for the free rent. So, so yeah, that was the biggest challenge was finding the six references, making sure that they knew I was okay, that I wasn't going to leave. But as far as in terms of Poe knowledge, that was like the bottom of their list. As
Oh,
long as I was willing to learn, you
okay.
know, they didn't expect me to be a scholar or have a PhD. I don't think they expect anyone. They just want someone who is going to be able to also psychologically deal with living by yourself in the
Right.
Bronx. That was like the major concern. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Which
We want
is
to make
not,
sure.
it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, so a saying in my family, and this is going to tap back into the mushroom reference here real quick. I'm pretty pale. I don't like the sun. I very much feel like, I could be a member of the Puerto Rican Vampire Club minus the Puerto Rican part. But like I don't mind, being in the dark, being away from the sun.
Right.
But I do know that it is important. We have to get our sun and things of that nature. But the joke in our family is to not become mushrooms, not grow mushrooms on us because we're hiding. So like right now, because the room that I'm in, I literally have one light on the desk and the rest of the lights are out.
So you're a shadow dweller.
I am a shadow dweller.
No, no, yeah, he considers himself a shadow dweller. So yeah, I'm Irish. I have some Italian blood, so I do get tan, but I do prefer being in the shade in the woods myself. Yeah, I don't like being in full sunlight.
Oh yeah.
Even though it's gorgeous, I'm sure Portugal and Greece are nice, but I don't think I would survive very well.
Totally. I'm wearing black. I'm hiding in the shade.
Right.
Sunscreen, like I mean, you can see my little cheeks are pink right now. So I mean, I can't hide. If I'm blushing, I can't hide anything. Me playing poker is not going to happen.
Right.
Um,
No, no, you'd be a horrible poker
I would
player.
be a horrible poker player.
Me too.
So, oh yeah, I can't hide my emotions at all. People would, oh, she's got a terrible hand. She should just fold right now. So yeah, no, me and poker are not friends. I don't.
But
Puerto Rican Vampire Club. Like, thank you for introducing me to that. So thank you.
of course, well, so the Puerto Rican Vampire Club does have its roots. I mean, Oscar and Carla are fictional, but there were kids who dressed goth
Yeah,
and visit Poe Park, and they were rare. You didn't see them as much, but they were around. So it was inspired by them, and so it's a kind of a yeah. They would come by and hang out at the cottage because it was a safe place. The cottage and the park were a safe place for the high school for the kids to hang out because the other park in the area wasn't as nice. It was a bit more drugs. The Poe Park was pretty clean and family friendly. There was a playground, and there was a community group called the Ravens that looked after the cottage, that looked after the park. So there was a nice sense of community in Poe Park. Yeah, so that was a huge thrill to be able to witness that, just to be a part of that community and yet be an outsider. I was sitting, I had the cottage to myself. I'd sit on the porch. I'd lock up at night, but when I opened, I'd sit on the porch and these kids would come by and they got to know me. And when I left, it was sad that, they were, became a part of the neighborhood.
that is
So
so cool. We have to talk about coffee because that's just part of this show.
thank you.
And you had mentioned coffee in there several times, which made me very, very, very happy. So, how much coffee in a day do you drink?
I drink. Oof. Well, this may be sacrilege, but we are transitioning to decaf because I've been drinking coffee my whole life for my health. I'm going to be 50 in November. So I have to the caffeine has got to, I've got to be very careful with the caffeine. So I still want the taste though. So only 1 cup a day. But now we're going to decaf. We found these beans that have a really nice, the same texture as regular coffee. So I try to stick to 1 cup a day. And then
Understood. And it's
black,
not oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, and then black tea and then other strong drinks. Yeah. I need to keep going. So
Totally. My mom, she she got to a point where she drank decaf as well because of her heart.
right.
And but I'll tell you what, Matthew,
So,
that that decaf coffee, good Lord, you could stick a spoon in it and it would stand up. So she
yeah.
was like, it may be decaf, but it's strong. So
Strong. No, the technology has improved, right?
yes.
Yeah. So I'm happy. I'm glad because I love the taste. I love the smell. I like starting my day with it. I just can't help it. It's like routine.
Yeah, totally. It's a ritual. For me, that's like I literally wake up bleary-eyed, pet the cat on my way to make the coffee, and he makes it longer because, he's wrapping himself in my feet as I'm trying to, make the coffee and not trip over the cat. So, when you're like half asleep and you're like, I gotta make the coffee. But I too have cut down my caffeine consumption as well. I used to drink a pot, in my 20s. My friends and I would stay up and write all night and we would drink lots of coffee. I don't do those things anymore. So
You can't after a
I
while.
can't. I do not. So like I said, there's no such thing. So every like I remember my 20s like death before decaf. And now I'm like, yeah, no, decaf is good. Like I have no problem with decaf. Sometimes I need it. So there's no shame. I don't coffee shame anyone. There's no tea shame. There's no wrong drink. Whatever gets you through, whatever makes you happy, whatever helps you write is totally acceptable.
Acceptable. Good.
My question to you is, now I know that you didn't always know you were going to end up at Poe Cottage, but in your youth, when you were thinking about all of the things that you might do, did you ever in your wildest dreams think that one day you would be a docent at Poe Cottage?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, it's although in retrospect it makes sense because the first job I had in high school was as a tour guide. Yeah, so my father he pointed this out to me. I hadn't even thought about it. And then, of course, so yeah, my first job was as a tour guide at the Mystic Marine Life Aquarium in Mystic, Connecticut, because I thought initially I wanted to be a marine biologist. That was my first chosen profession. And then science, I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. Not good at this stuff. So I thought I was just playing with beluga whales and dolphins, but no, you have to actually do equations. And so that was so the first job I had was showing people around Seal Island and the penguin exhibit. And yeah, that was a great gig. And that was my first job in high school.
Oh man, that is awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome. And to your point about your wife, and dreaming big,
Yeah.
and encouraging that. So I love what you said, because one of my favorite quotes is, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And
And
so, yeah, please.
you need someone to help you along with that. Yeah, you do need partners. It's hard to dream. It is, I mean, you can dream by yourself, but it always helps when you have someone cheering you on and affirming what you're doing. So
For
that's what
sure.
my wife is for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And like I said, the fact that were able to, be a docent and to fall like to have these, dreams. It's and then, Poe, like I said, this book is just it's delightful. Since we were on the D words, I didn't put that down. My mom and I bonded over Poe as a teenager. Like
Really?
we butted heads a lot as a teenager, probably because we were very similar.
Sure.
But Poe was that was our safe space. It's kind of
Really?
fun. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What did you
I
what stories did you what did you bond over? Do you remember?
So I came home. So we had just read The Telltale Heart. I was 13. We had just come home. I had just come home. I checked out a Poe book from the library and I came home and I told her about my day. And I was like, Mom, oh my God, you are not going to believe this, but we like check out this book. And she was like, oh, you read Poe? And I said, well, we just read The Telltale Heart. And she was like, oh my God. Her favorite story is the cat. And now she's from Argentina. She grew up in Argentina. So they say the double L as a J. So in
Right.
my head, it's always the cask of Amontillado. Always. It's so hard for everybody says a cask of Amontillado, and it's weird. So I always grew up with the cask of Amontillado. And so when she told me that, I immediately went to the book and I was like, where is that story? Where is that story? And she was like, go read it and let's talk about it. I devoured that story and I came back like maybe half an hour later and I was like, oh my God, Mom. And that was so my teenage discovery of Poe and having my mom be excited about Poe.
Right.
So even though like we would fight and because same thing, she couldn't stand the fact that I wore black every day. She didn't understand my music. She called it música de locos. So why do you listen to that music? How can you listen to it's just noise? Ha ha. And I was like, it's good stuff, Mom.
That's the point.
So so like I said, Poe was our safe, that was the safe ground. So Poe, Salvador Dali, Picasso, these were our safe guys.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
she was Argentinian.
yeah, yeah. And she came here in 1965, and to America. So she was 16 when she came here. So,
That's
she
one.
was.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so she grew up. Her grandfather had a massive library, and so she grew up reading his books. And I do believe Poe. He had Poe, and so
Right.
that's where she started reading Poe. And then, like I said, when I discovered Poe, so Poe was always. So even if we were having like horrible teenage angst,
Mhm.
you can guarantee that Poe like it would just spark conversations
That's
for hours.
That's fantastic. That warms my heart because that's what Poe does. He brings people together. He's got
Yeah,
international following,
yeah,
know the name, and they know those stories.
yeah.
It's
And
something.
sorry, I keep cutting you off. I can't see you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, no, it's fine. Keep going. Yeah.
But she loved mysteries. She loved Agatha Christie.
Oh,
So like I said, it was so for like I said, this book, like to me, I'm just so I have that too. I have Poe is this, like I said, teenage discovery, just wow, like holy crap, like this is so cool. And so like literature, like that was at 10, I fell in love with the Phantom Toll Booth and I fell in love with words.
fantastic.
But Poe at 13 was that love of literature. You're like, oh, okay, stories of revenge. Okay, Count of Monte Cristo.
Right.
So it literally kind of just spider webs
Hmm.
into all of these fascinating books, classic literature. But for me, all roads lead to Poe.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, he hits everything too, and he's got a romantic side. He's got
Yes.
a he, and he knew um, nature. He knew the names of flora and fauna, so he had a big mind, huge mind.
Yeah.
He wasn't just the revenge guy, but he is. But those stories are famous for a reason because I think he tapped into something raw
Oh, yeah.
and vital in the American psyche that hadn't been seen. I mean, Telltale Heart. But yeah, that's so happy. I'm so glad that that's what you and your mom had.
Oh, yeah. So the one of the very first I saw a one-man show. She got me into theater, ballet, like the appreciation of the arts. I wouldn't have an appreciation of the arts if it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
And she took me to this performance. It was a one-man show, and it was a guy, and he was Poe, and
Mm,
it was just him and a desk with the infamous the suit or the outfit that he's wearing in the daguerreotype.
right.
So he's wearing that outfit. His hair is, that style, but he has the mustache.
Uh-huh.
and it was just him and a desk and the stage. And I just was blown away. Like I said, my mom and I, all you have to do is say Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, and my mom and I would just be like, yes.
We're paying attention. Yeah.
What? Continue.
So when you heard the title of my book, then you must have just like been like, "Oof, wow." That's
Yes.
my mother loved Poe too. She loved The Raven, and her grandmother loved. Yeah, so there is. Yeah, it brings bringing parents and children together.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so cool. So being that I think we hit some pretty good notes here. Oh, I did want to ask you about the Poe Easter eggs. You did mention the Poe Easter eggs.
Mhm.
Um, so did you like when you put the Poe Easter eggs, and we're not going to talk about what they are, because no spoilers, but did you have to like rein yourself in? Did you have to say, okay, that's enough. There's like I don't want to give away too many. Or were you just kind of like what is it, Salt Bay, just like
Right, right. Good preference. I if it was organic and it worked, I would put it in. I probably have lost count. There's so many. And yeah, if it worked to put it in there, if it was clunky, I took it out. I did take some out, but no, I didn't I didn't cap myself. I didn't put a limit on it. I just said this is a Poe book. I'm just going to saturate it with as much Poe material as I can and go the full bore. So the gold bug plays a central role, obviously, with the codes.
yeah.
The Mask of Red Death, sort of at the end, but not. I don't know. I just threw as much as I could at it, and probably could have done more. But there's some post stories that I want to retell that I in initial drafts I had that where every chapter was like a post story, but that didn't really work. So, but yeah, no, I didn't cap myself. I didn't put a limit.
Nice.
I wasn't gonna get another chance at it. I realized this is, the only Poe book I'm gonna write for now, so might as well just go whole hog. So
Nice. So we're final questions here. Um, it seems like Poe and Fall of the House of Usher is kind of having like a heyday right now, revival, if you will.
right.
It seems like, so many different versions are being told.
Mhm.
Did you see Fall of the House of Usher, the one that was just recently done
The
on, I
Netflix.
think it was Netflix, yes.
Yes, yes, I did. I did. I enjoyed it very much. I mean, I heard Flanagan was doing it, so I thought, well, they're gonna do a good job. The acting was great. Yeah. And
Nice.
T. Kingfisher, have you read
I
her?
have not read that, but it is on my list.
Right.
I didn't want to read that one before. I wanted to read your book before reading that one.
Yeah. Well, you should tread carefully with those books. You know why? Well, not just the Poe, but the mushrooms.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I like, and like the fact that my family has a saying about mushrooms too is just like I said, it's so fun. I was like, wow, talk about like so many, it's kind of like a Venn diagram, like how these things kind of like, come together. Because it's literally so my aunt has a thick accent too, and it's just, oh, get off your butt, get outside, don't be a mushroom. And but I'm like, so what's kind of funny is my mom apparently likes white guys, and so she married, a very, very white guy. So I didn't get, and which is weird because normally the dominant genes are, darker hair, darker skin,
Right.
dark eyes. I didn't get any of that. I got all my dad.
Yeah.
And so I got the light skin, light eyes, and so my whole family would go outside and be in the sun, and they're all like, they would come back just golden brown, perfect. And there was me, I'd come back and I'm like, well, I'm a lobster even with sunscreen. This sucks. So that's why I'm like, sun bad, black good, dark yes. Mushroom. I'm a mushroom whether I realize it or not.
See, that's why you have to make friends with mushrooms because you
Yes.
are of the shade and dark, and that's what mushrooms like. So,
I need to respect the mushroom.
You respect the shroom. You'll come to terms with that. You'll
I will come to terms with that.
love
Uh,
it.
so that being said, I really do hope you write Bradford's book. I would really love to read that. I know you were talking about the
I've
audio.
I've got it outlined.
That's so cool. That is so
I
cool.
don't know that I will write the entire thing, but he's popping up in my current work in progress, and he's a main character, and he's the hero, and so you see bits and pieces of his book, and I have like a whole listing of the chapters. So yeah, you'll see it in some form or another.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to more of your stories. Very entertaining. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed Poe and I, and like I said, it just it had so much for me, and I just really wanted to talk and gush about your baby, and the fact that you got to be a docent, you got to live there, and so again, I have much reverence for you as well.
Well,
So
thank you so much. This is, yeah, I guess I said this is one of my first professional interviews, so I can't think of a better way to start off my career
well,
with this. This is fantastic. So
it was a
thank you.
pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
Will you please say my tagline of "Go forth and be magical"?
Go forth and be magical.